Everybody, I declare open this 14th public hearing of the Senate Select Committee on Job Security. I'd like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the country from which I am speaking today and pay my respects to elders past, present and emerging. This hearing is being conducted by video conference and teleconference with witnesses giving evidence for a number of locations around Australia. I thank each and every witness for participating in today's hearing despite the lockdowns and the restrictions and the challenges of technology. I look forward to the time when parliamentary committees are able to travel safely again to meet with individuals and organisations around Australia. For the benefit of those listening, this is a public hearing and a Hansard transcript of the proceedings is being made. The hearing is also streaming live via the web, which can be found at www.aph.gov.au. I remind all witnesses that in giving evidence to the committee, they are protected by parliamentary privilege. It is unlawful for anyone to threaten or disadvantage a witness on account of evidence given to a committee, and such action may be treated by the Senate as a contempt. It is also a contempt to give false or misleading evidence to a committee. If a witness objects to answering a question, the witness should state the ground upon which the objection is taken, and the committee will determine whether it will insist on an answer having regard to the ground which is claimed. If the committee determines to insist on an answer, a witness may request that the answer be given in camera. Such a request may, of course, also be made at any other time. The committee is due to report on the 30th of November 2021, where a witness takes a question on notice at this hearing. Answers should be provided by the 28th of September 2021. I remind all participants and committee members to ensure that their mobile phones are either off or switched to silent, and that you remember to mute yourself when you are not speaking or giving evidence. I'd now like to welcome representatives of the Communications, Electrical and Plumbing Union of Australia, and thank you for joining us. For your benefit, I am the Chair, Senator Tony Sheldon, and I am joined by Deputy Chair, Senator Matt Canavan, Senator Ben Small, and Senator Ben Walsh, and Senator Small will be coming on shortly. The Hansard record, will you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today? I can start with you, Mr. Murphy.
Thanks, Senator Sheldon. Good morning. My name's Shane Murphy. I'm the National President of the Communications, Electrical Plumbing Union Communications Division, and I appear here today with a number of my colleagues, members of the CEPU, are also NBN subcontractors who have been working on the network for a long period of time, and also from a range of non-English speaking backgrounds who came to Australia for a better life. If the Chair, if I may, I just do an opening statement, and
we might, Mr. Murphy, we'll just have the others give their introduce themselves, and then I'll come straight to you for a short opening statement.
Thank you.
Mr. Aga Mohammed Khan.
Hi, sir. How are you doing?
Good, thank you. And thanks for joining us this morning. It's very important.
Thank you. Thank you for putting time, and Shane and you and the others. So thank you very much, ex-senators. Thank you. So,
yeah. If you can just say what capacity you're appearing today.
Sure thing. So in 2019, I came like a background of the.
Sorry, Mr. Aga Mohammed Khan. If you we'll get to a statement in a moment, which should be much appreciated.
Sure.
But if you wouldn't mind just saying that, if you're a contractor or what capacity you're here today appearing as a member of the union, etc.
Yeah, I'm a contractor and a member of the union. That's right.
Good. Thank you for that. And Mr. Sagal?
Hi, mate. I'm a contractor and a member of the union as well.
Thank you. And Mr. Yahir?
Hi, I'm Mohammed Yahya. I'm an active subcontractor working with NBN through one of the DPs.
Thank you. And Mr. Raphael?
He's not on here at the moment, Chair.
Right. All right.
Mr. Nettlecock.
No worries. Good. Thanks very much. It's okay. We'll just go straight into. I note that the CEPU have lodged submission 194 with the committee. Would you like to make any amendments or additions to that submission? Mr. Murphy.
No, thank you, Chair.
Information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses and giving evidence to parliamentary committees has been provided to you as part of your invitation to appear. I now invite you to make a short opening statement of no longer than 2 minutes to allow time for questions. At the conclusion of your remarks, I will invite members of the committee to ask questions. Mr. Murphy, would you like to make a statement?
Thank you, Chair. Senators, when the National Broadband Network was announced in April 2009, Prime Minister Kevin Rudd told the Australian people the construction of the network would create at least 25,000 jobs during its rollout. Most of those jobs were for technicians to install fibre optic cable to businesses and households across the nation, with permanent network maintenance and repair jobs to follow as the network was completed. These should have been secure, well-paid jobs for technical trades and construction workers throughout Australia. But a decade later, the reality is that too many of those jobs are insecure and poorly paid. Australians would probably be shocked to learn that workers who install, repair and maintain the essential broadband internet connections are not employees of NBN Co. Under NBN Co's current business model, these essential skilled workers are forced to operate as contractors with no sick pay, annual leave, superannuation or other workplace rights. They have no say as employees would in negotiating their rates of pay, no power to negotiate the terms of their contracts to ensure basic workplace safety or reasonable hours. They're expected to buy and maintain their own technical equipment, have little to no control over how many jobs they will receive in a day. Some technicians are working 10 hours a day, covering hundreds of kilometres between jobs, with no allowance for travel time or unforeseen costs, meaning they can end up with no net income from a day's work. As one of our members told us, when he started working on the NBN in 2010, it was a decent income. Now it's barely a living wage. The contracts between NBN Co and its delivery partners and the subcontractors are causing real problems for our people. Jobs on the network are distributed unfairly, with some contractors favoured and too many exploited. We've heard from members who have been engaged to work on the NBN through ads in Gumtree and other platforms, who are then told by so-called head subcontractors or primes, as they are commonly known, what jobs they will get and where. These members without contracts outside of a handshake have gone on to have up to 40% of their pay taken to these dodgy contractors. They have been told their insurances were paid when it wasn't. They were directed to the Prime's accountants to do their taxes. We have clear evidence of sham contracting and profiteering across the industry, workers being exploited, especially those from non-English speaking backgrounds. NBN Co has effectively outsourced the backbone of its workforce, the installation and repair technicians, which has allowed a series of companies to gain the system and profit from a taxpayer-funded project. NBN Co management has completely failed to put in place any system to take accountability for its workforce or practices. There is no means by which our members can report problems or issues with their contracts or work environments directly with NBN Co. We hold grave concerns about much of the conduct reported to us within the network, stories of not just favouritism but forgery and fraud, favouritism where some managers are reported receiving kickbacks for favours, others secretly operating companies through relatives receiving work allocated by them to subcontractors. A project that was to be a source of pride has developed to hide a sinister underbelly of mistreatment and malfeasance that should be a source of shame. And because NBN Co is the wholesale monopoly broadband infrastructure provider, there are no alternative employers for these skilled workers, so they are trapped there. Their expertise is exploited by an employer that is a complete lock on the market for their skills. These workers have been engaged by a government business enterprise which is owned by the Australian people in a way that has almost completely removed their workplace rights, and we believe it's a disgrace. We believe it is the responsibility of the Australian Parliament to ensure that the treatment of workers on the NBN project is not distorting the Australian labour market, compromising hard-fought rights for workers and undermining the value of a career in technical trades in the communications sector. The skilled technicians who deliver and maintain Australia's national broadband network deserve job security and the fair pay benefits that go with that. Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Senators.
Good, thank you, Mr. Murphy. And Mr. Aga Mohammed Khan, if you'd like to make a few words and opening comments just for 2 minutes.
Thank you, sir. So I joined NBN in end of 2018 with the background of the cafe and restaurant, and I was under the Prime, and he pushed us to say, okay, you are electrician or you have the background of the electrician. And at the first day, he was pushing us to do a lot of job, like 8, 9 job with no experience. Right now, I've got experience. but at that time, just pushing us to do so many jobs. And if we do mistake because of the relationship they have with the management, they can save us, but that saving us is just costs a lot of consequences, like putting 10% extra because of the mistake we've done, or, leaving the tours this side of city and going to the job another side of the city, and just asking the technician to do some electrical job. And I'm talking about another technicians as well. Do some electrical job for them, for his family, for some management with no payments. Like, that's my experience, and it's just going to be more than 2 minutes. But
no, thank you for that. And we'll be asking questions very shortly as well. Mr. Sargol?
Yep. So I've been in the industry for 10 years, starting initially with Telstra, but in 2016, off the top of my head, I joined the NBN project. As you might know, I'm not sure if you're aware, but we're all proprietary limited companies. So our workers' comp, super, sick days, annual leave, any training and accreditations we need, those days are also unpaid days off, which we pay for the courses. The vehicles, our tools, any maintenance for anything we need to get the job done are our responsibility, and we fund all those. And with that, a massive concern of a lot of the boys I speak to are the rates. We don't have a negotiation with the rates. When I started in 2016, the rates were higher, if not on par with what we're getting now 5 years later. And as you know, the cost of living, inflation, everything has gone up, but our rates have not changed over the last 5 years. So that's a major concern for me and the boys I speak to. And the other part of this is there is no job security. We wake up in the morning, open our app and hope there's jobs there. You don't know, even if you have jobs, whether you're getting paid that day, because jobs might not get done due to NBN design errors, network errors. And so these are the issues that I've got and think we need to resolve.
Thank you very much for that. Then we'll shortly ask you questions, Mr. Sargol, and appreciate your appearance today. Mr. Yeehee.
Yeah. I don't want to repeat what my colleague said, so I'll try to say something different. As Shane mentioned, we don't have, as subcontractors, we are doing the work and we have no chance or any channel to negotiate our rates. NBN in the recent years, we have observed that NBN and the delivery partners, they flood the industry with newcomers, new technicians, not qualified, not having the right skills, having quick training, and just they join the workforce. And this affects the quality of the network, which reflects on all of us and the customers as well. And I see this as a kind of way to commoditize the technicians. Like in the negotiation with us, they have many of us. And of course, this affects that a normal technician like myself, many of my colleagues, we get only 3 jobs a day on average, sometimes 2, 4. The average is 3.5 jobs a day or 4 jobs. The point of flooding the industry with fresh technicians not qualified reflects on the quality of the internet customers get. And from my personal observation, I see NBN does not care about this internet quality to the end user. They just care about the numbers, the KPI numbers, how many new connections, how many false fix and on to present in the previous Senate meetings, but just bare numbers, not really what the internet user feels. Yeah, that's it.
Good, thank you. And lastly, Mr. Nikolowski.
Good morning, Senators. I've been in the industry for, this will be my 32nd year, formerly with Telstra. 15 years ago when I left Telstra and became a contractor, the rates we were paid are on par with the rates we're being paid today. The other issue too is NBN have now in their new contract, the unified contract, put in place us to guarantee our work for 28 days. We're working on a very old, deteriorated network. It's impossible to be able to give any guarantee because there's no maintenance plan in place by NBN for those cables that need remediation or attention to be put in place. And the fines that they're proposing to put on us are actually more than what we are getting paid to do the job. And look, like what the other colleagues have said, we're getting minimal work. At the moment, we're being paid an enablement fee by NBN, and only because of this am I able to keep working. If the enablement fee is removed by NBN at the end of October, then I'll probably have to look for another job. It's that simple. I think everything else has been covered, and I'll wait for some questions and hopefully I can elaborate a little more.
Thank you, Mr. Nedolgolski. Just want to then I'll start off asking some questions. Mr. Murphy, in a letter you wrote to NBN Co in May, you raised serious allegations of corruption and misuse of public funds. Particularly, you claim to be in possession of a number of examples of serious and willful malfeasance involving the manner in which prime contractors are engaging labour for work on the NBN. Would you be able to elaborate for us in some details about what are the examples of these serious and willful acts?
Well, look, certainly most of this has been provided to either delivery partners or NBN, and we certainly don't hang on to that information. It's a matter for them to investigate. But some of the stuff we've come across, and certainly some of the Amir will be able to speak to this, working through primes, the secondary contractor through a DP, where there is evidence of no contracts at all. When they have questioned their contracts with their primes, all of a sudden they've been given a forged contract with their signature placed on that. How the individuals become available of their signatures simply by asking them when they start to place their signatures on a blank piece of paper with some other details, and then at some point in time transferred without their knowledge onto these so-called sham contracts. They're the types of information we've forwarded across. There's been other information about favouritism for jobs. And whilst the system's changed now, our NBN Co is dispatching the work directly through the new SMAX dispatch system. Previous to that, there was instances of favouritism of managers in companies giving certain primes. There was allegations of, and whilst this was given verbally to me, I've passed this on and I've told those individuals it's a matter for the police. Favours of narcotics being kickbacks, tobacco, and other sorts of matters. So we take those matters very seriously. We encourage those individuals, if they come forward, to immediately take those matters to the appropriate authorities. And we certainly inform the relevant the delivery partner and NBN Co. There's some of the concerning factors in relation to the primes. I'll elaborate a little bit further because I touched on it in my opening statement. There's also some concerns, and we have raised these with delivery partners, where there are some managers or supervisors owning companies who are then having, instead of the subcontractors working direct with the delivery partner, working through those secondary companies in either managers, relatives or other people's close to them's names. Again, this has been raised directly with the delivery partners and NBN Co, but it still maintains its place within the NBN network. And again, instead of people working direct, having another 20 to 30, and in some instances, as Amir will point out, up to 40% of their income taken from their weekly payments, where they haven't increased, as many have already pointed out, over a significant number of years, and with some actually lower today than what they were under the previous OMAR contract.
And thank you, Mr. Murphy. I just want to go, this very serious allegations regarding these acts that, is there illegal substance? So you're saying illegal substances are being provided for people to win work? And that's the condition?
That is what has been reported to the union verbally, yes.
What's that illegal substance? Is it drugs, and what is a drug, or is it some other illegal?
As I understand, yes, as reported to us, it's an illegal substance.
Is that cocaine, is it?
But that's as I understand, yes, it's been reported to us.
I understand that we have had some engagement with NBN Co on this matter, albeit not as soon as you may have liked. Did NBN Co make any commitment to you as a result of these discussions that this behaviour would cease, and has it ceased?
Certainly from my meetings with as high as the CEO, who did meet with me directly. Yes, there was commitments given by NBN to take these matters seriously. They would be seriously investigated, and if proven in the future, people removed from working on the project, and if necessary, as you know, being an illegal matter, matters if necessary would be reported to the police, but that's a matter for them. I've had no further reports from NBN Co. There has been a couple of matters brought to my attention. I've brought to delivery partners, not in relation to the matters exactly narcotics we're talking about or anything like that recently. They're currently investigating them. In fair practice to them, they are investigating, and due process is being followed in relation to those matters. So certainly it's not a matter for us as a union. If I've received this information, as I should, it's immediately passed on to the relevant people.
Mr. Murphy, thanks for that evidence. And this question about the NBN Co, there was a delay, as I understand, NBN Co meeting you after you had raised the series of these allegations. What was the length of time that there was a waiting period? And just want to be clear, have those practices of willful and serious malpractice, is that still continuing? I just want to be clear about that.
Look, I can't say right now that the whole industry has been cleaned up. No, there's certainly been some improvements, and I'll give credit when I call it out where it's due. Since the matters have been raised, some of the delivery partners have, tightened up the screws. I will say removed some operators they don't believe are operating in the right way. They've been removed from working for those delivery partners for their own reasons, maybe reasons were raised by others. So there has been some progress in relation to some of these people. Is it being cleaned right up? No, it's not. Some of these operators are still operating for other delivery partners. And as late as this week, I've been calling on NBN that some of these guys, if proven, should be removed full time from the project.
Now, there's been allegations, as you've said, of illegal substances and cocaine specifically being as part of a package to win work. Is the company that the allegation was made against and the individuals involved still operating at for NBN Co through the supply chain?
If I put it this way, I wouldn't say to win work. It's more, as I understand, as reported to us. It's in relation to getting additional work for those people that are the subcontractors that are working through the prime, as opposed to those might have been working direct to the delivery partner. It's for those types of favours, whether it be cash or tobacco or whatever is alleged. It's those types of things for those extra jobs. And when we talk about that, and in particular the reference to the jobs, I'll just say this as well. In times when it's gone quiet in the past, prior to the implementation of the dispatch done by NBN Co direct to the subcontractor now, there was many instances when work was in ebbs and flows, and when it was in the ebb and not the flow. Some subbies, as reported, will get they'll see in the morning they would get 5 or 6 jobs a day, similar to others, but during the day or early in the morning they'd see a number of jobs disappear from their queue and end up with 2 or 3, and guys working through primes or others getting up to 5 to 8 jobs a day. So that's where the disparity and where people started to become suspicious around why is this happening. Why is this, why are people getting more work than us working for a prime as opposed to working direct? And then obviously from there, people start to see things or hear things, and that's where that stuff was verbally passed the information on.
Thank you, Mr. Murphy. I just want to go to this question. I'll ask some questions of the other witnesses in a moment, and no doubt my colleagues will as well. Do you believe that your members are generally paid fairly, and do you believe your members are able to at least meet the income levels provided for by the minimum wage and meet their business and statutory obligations with the payments they receive from NBN?
No, look, absolutely not. And I'll just, if I may, Chair, just outline a couple of reasons which have already been outlined by some of the participants this morning. They're paying for all their own insurances, all their own costs. Now, whether it be sick leave, whether it be workers' comp, bean insurance, business insurance, vehicle insurance, a range of different things. The rates have, whilst they have absolutely no say, the simple process is this way. NBN announces it's due for new updated contracts. They put those out for tender. Companies have no talks with any of the subcontractors. The DPs then go and tender for the work, and it's a cutthroat environment, as we all know. And the lowest bidders are coming out with the work. At that time, they then set the rate for the subcontractor, and it's the take it or leave it approach. But as you know, with many of, as put before, there is nowhere else for these people, trades and skilled people, to go. They're then stuck signing up for rates in some instances today are less than what they were under the previous OMAR contract. And as Steve correctly pointed out before, if we did not have, when SMAX had initial issues come in and the new contract with some of these new rates that have been cut, if the $75 payment wasn't added, which has been extended now till October, in October, many of will go to the wall or either be back protesting on the streets, which is not a viable option for small business owners, where they simply can't afford to go to work working on a national, the national broadband network run by the government.
Is there a quick fix approach? And I mean quick fixes in dodgy job. We've already talked about some of the dodgy arrangements in NBN. But is there is there collective bargaining? What instruments do you have to protect somebody who's unfairly dismissed? And what are the what are the sort of powers that you have to properly protect delivery partners?
No, there is no collective bargaining, Chair. There is no protections for these people. They roll up every morning not knowing how many jobs they got, if they're going to get any work any work at all, or where their work location will be and how far from home, and the number of jobs they're going to receive to live and whether they're going to make a living or not. So these people are going to work without security, without any say in their pay or conditions, and in many instances, there's times they will report either without reason given or for not a genuine reason, being stood down for days without work and not receiving an income. These guys are really doing it tough, and if things don't change fast, many will disappear. The further thing I want to say that's been touched on, we need to also, there is no business plan, and I mentioned this to NBN in a meeting, of the total number of required contractors that the build's being completed. And yes, we are seeing small parts being built around some of the ageing technology. But outside of that, it's now installation and repair work. And there is no business plan by either NBN Co, which is the main player here, on the total number of resources required on the project. And what's occurring here through Gumtree and other platforms where we're getting unskilled and many other people applying, coming from many industries where they've never worked in this sector, sliding underneath the primes, and then creating a mass flood of contractors, referring to the position of Mohammed and others, where you then only get 2 jobs a day or 3 jobs a day, who's a very skilled and many skilled, been on the job for many years, invested in their business and their training, are now finding themselves unable to make a reasonable living because people that have flooded the market, and we haven't got a business plan of how many actually required. And you can't have a situation where there's certain volume of work, but there's an unlimited volume of people doing it. And that is the disconnect here between the whole model, along with obviously subcontractors having absolutely no say or security in their current arrangements or future.
Mr. Murphy, you went to this point of the rates, that there's no security about how, if I understood correctly, that the rates have been struck. There's no formal process. There's no observation. Is there a rise and fall formula? Which you take into account workers' comp, sick leave, annual leave, capital investment, and of course, labour that's provided. Is there a rise and fall formula that's used, or they just simply set rates and arbitrarily change those rates at will?
They are set rates, and they are arbitrarily changed during the course of the contract. Obviously, contracts signed between the delivery partner and the subcontractor, and they can be changed during the course. And we have seen many instances over the past number of years where, you know, rates have either gone down, changed, or been joined together. And when I say joined together, they're not paid the same rate for the two different claims. And when they are joined together, they'd be paid a lesser amount. Significantly, it happens during the course of the last contract, and it continues. It has already happened under the current contract.
So Mr. Murphy, there's been, for example, in part of our cost structures, there's obviously we've been witnessing various fuel spikes over the years and recently. Is there a rise and fall formula that allows technicians to be reimbursed for the fuel they're using, the additional cost of running their business?
There is no rise and fall in any fluctuation arrangements for anything, whether it be fuel, insurance costs, running, whatever it is for the business. There is no rise and fall. It is a set fixed price per job or per whatever. And as I said, flexible to change at the ability of the delivery partner, an NBN code. In relation to the rise and the fall, as you say, I'll just add a little bit further. As recent as, you know, the last couple of weeks, whether it be delivery partners or NBN code, having further requirements on subcontractors in relation to, you know, whether it be testing equipment, and some of this testing equipment they require, some of them don't even use. Whether it be health and safety equipment to carry in the vehicles, some of that equipment that's not required, they place it as a requirement. So they place an additional cost and burden on the subcontractor's business. But again, there's no rise and fall in relation to the additional cost when it comes to the application of the rate.
Right. So just on the, I might I know there's some more. I'm sure the other senators will ask a number of questions of the other witnesses as well, which I appreciate, again, your time coming here. With the issue regarding, this is a general question, who would like to jump in. In your idea as a prime, and I might go with you first, Mr. Aga Hamid Khan, are you being paid enough to cover your own expenses, with enough left over to pay the bills, support your families, and build a future?
Not at all, sir.
And what sort of challenges have you got on the income amount? What's the examples of the pressure financially that's on you particularly?
Because when I started NBN, we didn't have much money to start and buy things, and he was promising us to give us something and then we pay him back. But finally, after we get in the NBN, he said, no, I don't do anything. So we have to borrow a lot of money. We put it in this business, and almost, I can say, after 1.5 years, whatever I make, I paid off the cars, tools, and some sort of testing equipment. I can say in last 3-4 months, thanks Mr. Shane, it helped us to do direct. I have more saving than before when I was under the prime.
You just want to elaborate how much your prime was taken from you, Amin?
It was saying 30%, but it was way more. I can say
how much more was
50%. It's 40 to 50%, sir.
40 to 50%. The prime, the NBN's paying 40 to 50%. What services is being provided to somebody who what services do they provide that you couldn't provide directly to NBN?
Nothing, sir. Everything was provided by us, and the prime says 20%, but because we are from different countries, so we didn't know that what's GST. Do we need to get GST? He didn't talk about the GST. Then we find out 10% GST he's put in his pocket. But because of the so many things, he was make a problem with our work. He was saying, okay, you've done this one. For example, you damage the carpet of the customer, and you get paid like $2,000 less. And we never know what was the issue. When I put all of those things, I can say 50%. For example, for additional payment, BSA or NBN was keeping for 2 months. NBN said, PSA said, okay, you're getting like an additional payment. We never get that additional payment because all was going to that prime.
And can I just I'll just go now to Senator Canavan. I've got many more questions I'd like to ask you and see if how we're going for time. But I'll hand you over now to Senator Canavan.
Sorry, Chair, just coming off mute. Thank you, gentlemen, for your evidence this morning. Can I ask at the outset, we have had some evidence here of the rates of pay for individual jobs. What is the average revenue for a contractor working for the NBN, annual revenue?
Steve?
I can answer that. Good morning. So at the moment, a basic fault that could take you anywhere up to 2 hours, or even sometimes 3 hours, you get paid $74 for that fault. An installation job, you could get paid $80. That could take you an hour to 2 hours as well, maybe more. Or there's certain circumstances where we can go out to a job and spend 2 to 3 hours on a job, and then come to the realization that something out of our control that's causing us not to be able to finalise the job. We then get $0 for that job. So we don't get paid anything for jobs that can't be completed. So if we're getting two jobs a day, it's about $148 for the day, and then you can take out your fuel, your other expenses, your training, your tools, and in saying that, since I joined the NBN, the tools that I've had to acquire have cost me in excess of $10,000 to be able to perform the job in accordance with the customer, and obviously and in accordance with NBN, I suppose. So, and that's pretty much where we are at.
That's not quite the question I asked. I'll come back to the question I asked, but just on those rates and what you've outlined. I mean, are you yourself a trained electrician? Is that your trade, or do you have another trade qualification?
So I have a telecommunications qualification. I have a certificate too in telecommunications. I came through the old Telstra system where I did a 3-year apprenticeship to become a qualified technician. And so I've been in the industry for this will be my 32nd year. And like I said, 14 or 15 years ago when I commenced as a contractor, I was paid the same rate, if not more, for the work I did back then in comparison to the work I'm doing today.
Right. What is the average annual revenue, though? What I asked is the average annual revenue. Do you have any figures on that? And I'm not necessarily I'm asking anyone today. And I'm not asking for your own individual revenue, to clarify, just the average across the industry, roughly, for a typical contractor working in jobs.
It could be, look, up until recently, without the enablement fee, in all fairness, under the old OMA project, I can openly say to you that I was struggling to make between $700 and $800 a week under the old OMA project. That was working for the delivery partner at BSA. And since the Unify's come in, it's probably anywhere from $1,500 to $2,000 a week now. But as Senator Sheldon mentioned earlier, the cost of our insurances has gone up. The cost of fuel has spiked again, and obviously there's the bills at home also keep rising.
Yeah, but just so I'm getting this right, you're saying you get revenue of roughly, at the moment with this enablement fee, you get roughly around $100,000 a year revenue, but I'm using $2,000 a week figure. But that's yep. I am asking about revenue. I realise the distinction. That's just revenue. That doesn't include your costs of fuel,
that's correct.
Bills,
Absolutely.
Insurance, covering for your own leave and super, etc.
Absolutely.
Right. Okay. All right. Well, that does seem quite low. I mean, are you saying, given that, if that is the case, and the rates are that low, and most of us, sound of it yourself and others are qualified, Are you seeing an exodus from the industry? Because I would have thought there's other jobs around. Just being a tradie would be presumably more lucrative, but going to mines and things like that. I'm not saying you're necessarily in the position to do that, but are you seeing across the industry people leaving because the
absolutely.
pay doesn't seem all that good?
Look, absolutely. There's qualified technicians that have just completely walked away from this industry, and a lot of the people that are probably on this NBN project, and I think you may have heard it, a lot of people are probably coming in the last 2-3 years through fast-track courses, or whether they've come through primes or whatever the case might be. I don't know individual circumstances, but the people that I'm coming across that had the 20 years experience and the 30 years experience are no longer. It's very far and few in between now, and I'm at the point at my age, unfortunately, as you get older, it's harder to employ people like myself in other industries, and it's pretty much what I did when I left school. I left school and I started with Telstra, and I'm now 51, and I don't really know anything else, and I don't want to. I shouldn't have to go and look for something else that I'm qualified in.
Can I add to that? Sorry, I don't mean to cut in.
Yeah, go for it. I'm not asking anyone in particular, so yep, go for it.
So I think at the moment, the reason why you haven't seen numbers fall off is that
if you wouldn't mind just giving your name first before you speak, that would be helpful.
Sorry, it's Burak Segal. So I think that enablement fee is what's keeping people in the field at the moment, because on average at the moment, from myself and a few of the technicians that I speak to, we're getting between 2 to 3 jobs. On a good day, you might get 4. Without the enablement fee, that's between $180 and $240 a day. With the enablement fee, it doubles that. So without that enablement fee, we're not meeting those prices. Even with that, it's $2,500 a week, and that's got to cover you with your leave, your workers' comp, your super, your maintaining your car. Any training that we pay for has to cover the days off we have. If we have a breakdown with our vehicle, any tools break, that money has to cover everything. And we're not guaranteed that money either, because if you go to a job, you don't know what's happening on the day. If you don't have a particular material, then you can't complete. So there's a material shortfall. Or if there's an issue with a network where a builder hasn't put in a pipe from the side of the house to the street, or NBN design is wrong, we don't get a payment that I believe we deserve. It might be $47 for 2 hours on site, where I might try and get through 120 metre lengths of pipe and hit that block at the last 20 metres, and we don't get paid for that. So, and that's happened in the past, where you're 3 hours in and you're incomplete and you get $47 before taxes, before expenses, before everything you've done on that day.
Mm-hmm. I mean, look, I completely understand some. Sorry, did someone want to add something? I didn't.
It's Shane Murphy said that. I was just going to add that goes on top. You add your running costs with your fuel, day in, day out, and these guys, when they say go out to a job and don't get paid when it becomes an incomplete through no fault of the subcontractor, that's a running cost out there. It's time, usually an hour or sometimes an hour or more on the job, but then realising you've got to a certain point, as just explained, you can't complete the ticket for the customer, and the job goes into hold, but the subby then doesn't get any payment. So work it out. You're running a small business, and you've got an 8 or 10 hour window to try to do whatever's available, and you take a couple of those jobs out in a day and you don't get paid. That really restricts your income. And go to the second point made before from Barack and others. Without the $75 enablement fee, which originally came by NBN because of the XMAX issues with the introduction to the new dispatch system, it's now becoming more that without that, there would be no survival. And in relation to many people walking away, if these guys have their own app system they communicate across the country with, the subcontractors. And if I regularly, when I say regularly, I might have a look at it once a week or once a fortnight. I'm too busy, sometimes longer than that. And I regularly, when I look in, and even as late as this morning, vans for sale, tools for sales. It's just a regular thing in different states across the country where people are selling their assets to their business and giving it away. And it's just that we're working on the national broadcast network, and many of these people being, skilled operatives over a long period of time and invested costs in their business.
Yeah. I've just got one more question then. I wanted to just clarify the contracting arrangements. I think in your submission and the BSA, it sounds like you contract to delivery partners, so to speak, rather than the NBN directly. If that's correct, how many delivery partners are there? And why isn't, if there are multiple of them, why isn't there more competition to try and get people and offer better pay or conditions because of that multiplicity?
Well, if I just outline that, again, Shane Murphy speaking, if you go back to what I said earlier, the process when it comes up for renewal of these contracts, it's put out a tender, the company's tender, the usual competitive process. And then it becomes the cat and mouse game about who gets the work based on the lowest bidder. And then at the fall of the tree there becomes the apple, which is the subcontractor, and he's just expected to sign up. So whatever savings they've put in their tendering process then falls back out to the small business owner at the end of the food chain. And that's where this is all happening at. And, there isn't, and when you say, isn't there competition? Technically, you're right. There's, you've got a number of delivery partners that are probably going to appear here over the next couple of days. You've got BSA, Service Stream, Lend-Lease, I understand is now transitioning to Service Stream through a business acquisition. You've got Downer. So you've got a range of 4 or 5 companies across the country doing the work and under the contractual arrangements, but they're either on similar rates at each of the companies. They're only going to take, there's a certain amount of subbies and work available. And when you look at the rates, some might be a few dollars higher on one job here and then lower on another job than the other one. So there's not much difference when it comes to, and the biggest point here is these guys have gotten absolutely nowhere to go. They are skilled operatives, they're tradespeople, skilled technicians over many years, and they have one industry, and it's the NBN. And if outside of that, they've got nowhere to go. So it is important, they do have secure work. I think some reasonable say and fair pay. And building a way forward for the future around, as I said, a business model from NBN code that defines the total number of workers required on currently and in future, and then mapping what that looks like as we move forward. Because otherwise, you can't have a system where you've got so many jobs, but are way more people continually working in the network, which creates this ongoing environment, which floods the market and again puts the power back in NBN's code where these guys have absolutely no power. The last thing I want to say is the model. You've got NBN code who are now dispatching work direct through not through the delivery partner like it used to and then dispatched to the subby. You've got NBN dispatching the work directly via its XMAX system. You've got the subcontractor being managed by the delivery partner. And that's for those who have got directly. But where there is a difficulty further, you have the prime company down the next level, which is where Amir refers to, he used to work for before. Now, finally, since we've had a bit of an argy-bargy over the last few months, some of these companies, I will say, have improved and are taking people on direct from underneath the prime. But you've got the prime further down the food chain. So 2 issues. Already on low rates, haven't increased over a number of years, and some have decreased. And then you get the next level of person working through the third man, who's losing a further, as Amir says, up to 20 to 50% of his income. That is the significant problem we have across this whole industry. And you've got to ask yourself, I'd ask the committee this. I don't understand either why we don't have relationships, all of the subcontractors directly working for the delivery partner, and there should be no middleman. It removes any suggestion, suspicion, or actual malfeasance or other sort of corruption, or even any attempt at that. Or importantly, if it's not the delivery partner NBN co, it's one or the other. There cannot be the middleman in the middle. You can't have people on already low rates struggling, as Steve says, who has worked direct, not through a middleman, making $800 or $1,000 a week as a small business owner, not with an ability to go anywhere else for work. And, this is where we end up when these guys without the $75 an hour right now wouldn't be lifting their head off the pillow to service the customers.
Thank you very much for that evidence, Mr. Murphy. I'll go straight now to Senator Walsh.
Thank you, Chair, and thank you all very much for being there. So it seems like a good time to hear a bit more then from Mr. Aga Mohammed Khan about what happened with your prime contractor that you were working for, who I understand in turn contracted to the delivery partner BSA. Could you tell us what your experience was of your prime contractor, and particularly around the problem with the deductions from your pay that you mentioned?
Sure, thank you, Senator. So, in this leaving him, and I was just trying to find another plan because there wasn't any way to get direct to the delivery.
Could I suggest you turn your video off, because we could hear you before when you didn't have the video on. Yeah, thanks.
This guy said no, and he said,
excuse me, Mr. Mayor,
your
camera.
The team's happening.
Excuse me.
Mr. Aga Mohammed Khan, we can't hear you. If you turn your video off and keep it off, we'll be able to hear you. Thank you. Could you say that again?
Sure thing. Is that better now?
It is.
That's better. Thank you.
Yes, you're welcome. So in March, we start to, me and 5-6 another technician, we start to argue with this prime about GST, about the percentage he's taking, and because he said very confidently, he said, I am NBN, and wherever you go, I'm gonna pull you out, and I'm gonna remove you from whole NBN platform. I said, mate, we need to go. That's better to do like peacefully. He said, no, there is no release letter in my business. So we start to talk to some management, our supervisor. He said, we can't get involved. That's your decision. If you want to leave. You can come back in 6 months, but there is no promise we're gonna onboard you. Better to fix your relation or issue with this prime. But anyway, we end up we get sacked from his company, not BSA, and we've been off the road for 3 months. And it was in the time everyone just protesting, and we had a chance to meet Mr. Shane in some of these protests happening. And then after that, because these guys, they feel like a little bit fear, and we had someone support us from the back. They start to change the behavior slow by slow. But last 2-3 months, Mr. Shane knows that we had so many issues with this management, even that prime being sacked from BSA, and he moved on to land lease, and he's got a 2 big contract with land lease. But we had so many issues. Right now, everything is settled down because this management, they know that we have support. But before that, honestly, they wouldn't, very arrogant, they wouldn't even answer our call. Just a supervisor, he was friend with him, and he was saying there is no any chance. I started to speak to the land lease to get a contract with land lease, but unfortunately, and also I had a chance to talk to management in land lease, but land lease says your name being used by gold into that prime, and even illegally he used our name in that in land lease, which is we needed release all the way from all the company we wanted to go on board direct. So we've been off the road for 3 months.
Okay, thank you. And you mentioned before that this prime was taking 40 to 50% of your income at the time. What sort of money was that? Yeah, what sort of money was that leaving you with for a week's work?
So imagine if you make like a $3,000 or $4,000. So he was making like a couple of $1,000s per week from us, and I wasn't just me. It was just like nearly 20 to 25 technicians at that time.
Okay. I'll go to Mr. Yahia now, because I understand that you had similar experiences with the same prime contractor. Would you be able to tell us your experience? No? Mr. Murphy, did you want to clarify?
As I understand, Mohammed works direct to the delivery partner.
Yeah, I'm not with the prime. I was never with a prime. I'm working directly with PSA.
Okay.
But just to highlight that the prime is one of the problems. It's not the only problem. It affects some people, but other problems affect more majority, like compared to
the treatment. Yes.
Okay. And did you want to tell us, Mr. Yahir, a little bit more about your experiences working direct for the delivery partner?
Compared to the prime, specifically compared to the prime, as I understood from Amir now, where he gets like 8 to 10 jobs, I have never seen the 10 jobs in my life with NBN, never. Like maybe one day through the last 3 years, I've taken maybe one day like 8 jobs. It was like overflow from other technician, wherever. But the usual, as I mentioned earlier, is 3, 4 jobs a day, 5 to 6 if it was good. That's the average. So I can safely say the average is 4 jobs. Please note that the number of jobs, when the other gentleman asked about the average or the annual income and so on, we should not calculate the jobs as 4 jobs a day or 5 jobs multiplied by $70 and the whole year, because as my other colleagues mentioned, NBN asks for courses, trainings. We don't get paid for the courses cost itself and the days off we take for the course. So
it sounds like there's an issue with the distribution of the work, where you don't necessarily know how many jobs you're going to get a day, and that there might be some difference between the amount of jobs that you get as a delivery partner, contractor direct, versus the amount of jobs you might get if you're with a prime. Is that right?
Yes. If you observe that, like from my observation and like the facts we see now, technician working with a prime, they get more jobs, and I've learned as well more good jobs, like the sweet jobs. There's something called fiber to the basement, where you get the jobs in inside the building itself. I do fiber to the node, fiber to the curb, it's in the street. So I spend more time setting up my guards and driving between network points and so on. So that's my comment about working directly compared to the prime part. The number of jobs and the type of jobs, how easy or profitable is to do a single job.
If I could just add to that, Senator, if it's okay, just in relation to the type of job, I'll just be very quick. Fibre to the basement work is the one that's a little bit easier, a little bit, maybe you can make a little bit of a dollar out of. But again, it's limited access to direct type contractors. They're getting limited work or none at all when it comes to FTTP work. That seems to go through third-party primes.
Okay, thank you.
Just a quick thing, because like my other colleague, about my background, I'm a telecommunication engineer. I have a bachelor degree in engineering. And I've been on this for 8 years. I worked with Telstra before and other jobs in the telecom field.
Okay.
I'll mute.
Yeah.
Sorry, it's Steve Nedelkowski. Can I just add something, if that's all right, Senator?
Yeah, and then I did want to ask you a question yourself.
Oh, okay. I'll wait for that then, if you like. Yeah.
Well, I was going to ask you about the difference. You said you'd been there direct for Telstra, was it, or even earlier, Telecom? And I was just wondering what the difference is in your working life from having been a direct employee early on to then moving on to becoming a contractor, in terms of your job security and your reliability of your income.
That's directed at me, I assume.
Yes, that's right.
Like when I was the advantages and disadvantages of being an employer at Telstra were that at Telstra, if you were good at your job and you could do 8 to 10 jobs a day, you would take home a salary. When I started as a contractor, being able to do 8 to 10 jobs as a contractor was a lot more rewarding financially. You were paid for each and every job that you would do, And 15 years ago, $75 a job was, to do, and I was probably averaging anywhere from 6 to 8 jobs a day. So you can do your calculations. But at the same time, if it wasn't for Telstra, then I wouldn't have been in that position to be able to have those qualifications, to be able to earn that, like a decent dollar and things like that. But since I joined the NBN, things have gone backwards. And just to elaborate on something that Mohammed was saying earlier, I used to get text messages. So I would be given 2 jobs a day, and they expect me to travel 2.5 hours to a site where I'd have to probably pay $24, $30 in tolls. No guarantee that I'd be able to get that work done. So I would make a business decision and say to one of the managers that, sorry, I'm not coming in today. And they would then get threats saying, it doesn't look good on you, it's going to bring a spotlight upon you. And they're things that were, in my 30 years of experience, like I don't need to have somebody hold their finger over my head, like, because and then I run into, and in the days where I would go into work, I'd be running into people that were working under primes, and they'd have 8 to 10 jobs. Now, and no disrespect to some of those, but some of them were so underqualified. Sometimes I'd have to go back out to a job when 7 or 8 of those technicians would go out there, and then, hooray, they would give me the job, and then I'd go out there and have to solve the problem that 7 or 8 technicians couldn't solve. And it wasn't on one occasion, many, many occasions. And
thank you. Just finally.
Sorry, Senator. It's Peter Paul here from the CPU, and I'd firstly like to apologise for being late. I had some technical troubles. If I could just supplement what Stephen's saying there, the big issue with our members are they're not like normal contractors that you would get out to as a plumber or an electrician. They don't have the ability to choose the work. They don't have the ability to control profit and loss. There is a set rate for the job, and that's it. If they refuse work, they run the risk of being turned off by NBN or the delivery partner. So they're actually entrapped in the industry where they've got to turn up, they've got to perform work that is not profitable on a daily basis, sometimes on a weekly basis, and there would be months where these guys go through day-to-day work without making a dollar or doing work that is unprofitable. So they don't have control of their day like a normal subcontractor would have. And that is probably the biggest issue that faces these guys. I'm happy for the guys to correct me if I'm wrong.
Well, I might just sort of jump in there, Mr. O'Connell, sorry, just due to time, and just ask the member participants to just give their views. It sounds like from the evidence that we've had today, it just seems like there's no argument for there to be this extra middleman of the prime contractors. And I'm just wondering if your advice to the committee is that basically there shouldn't be any prime contractors and people should be able to contract direct with the delivery partners or direct with the NBN. Just interested in the members' views on that. Anyone who'd like to jump in.
Can I start? Sorry, it's Burak Sagar. So we don't know, like we said before, we don't set the rates, and we're not sure what we get paid in comparison to what the DP gets paid. I'm sure it's confidential. So if the DPs are getting double or triple what we're getting, we have no idea. So asking for an increase in rates and getting paid what we deserve, why are we not directly going or contracting through the NBN? Why is there one middleman, sometimes 2, if there's a prime in between us and the DP as well? I mean, cutting out that middleman there resolves, our pay increase issues and what we're complaining about. Because we've been informed by people that NBN does pay the truck roll or the incomplete rates to the DPs, but that's not necessarily reflected in our pay and doesn't always get put in our pockets. So we're not sure what's happening with that situation as well.
And just to add to that, Steve Nedeljkovski again, well, our interaction on a daily basis is always with NBN. We don't even talk to our delivery partners that are this middleman, right? So I've never been able to understand, I suppose, why the delivery partners have existed. Because, like I said, everything that we do, whether we come across a problem out there, not being able to do the work or do the work or whatever the case is, our interaction is 100% with NBN. So it makes no sense to have these delivery partners there profiteering, and that's fine. But at the same time, we're the meat and the sandwich, I suppose. So.
Okay, I think that's really clear evidence there on the preference to directly contract with the NBN and cut out both the middlemen. Thank you very much. I'll go back to you, Chair.
And thanks, Senator Walsh. Senator Small.
Thanks, Chair, and good morning, everyone. Sorry, I'm on a phone, so I can't see your name. So I'll address my questions broadly, and then whoever wants to chip in, please feel free. I've got a couple of questions, I think, just to try and get my head around this. Someone said earlier that the prime contractor was taking like $4,000 a week, and then they're taking a clip of that so that you end up with like $2,000 a week if you're working for one. So what about the people that are contracting directly or to the delivery partner? Are they effectively getting $4,000 a week? Where does the money go in that case?
If I could just answer it, Shane Murphy.
Yep.
That's by the evidence, and I'm sure some will answer as well. Previously, people working directly getting less jobs. People working through primes were getting more jobs. That's the distinct difference with your income and why you then, it was referenced by Steve and others that you're getting 2 or 3 jobs a day, getting you 150 or 2 or 3, $200 a day. That's nowhere near what you referenced about by the 2 or 4,000. In reference to the prime, that's where there has been some preferential treatment given in the past, and people working for those were doing their, 6, 8, 10 jobs a day, and that's where they were able to earn a bigger income. Again, this is the difference in the disparity. We've now got a situation where the work's dispatched, more importantly, by NBN directly, and it comes more relevant to the point made by the previous senator about the need for more direct relationships with the subcontractors and NBN Co. And really putting in place the monetary that's being taken by delivery partners from the mouths of the subcontractors, where they're seeing rates decline and putting it in their pockets, who are performing the work on behalf of the everyday Australians out there connecting their NBN.
Okay. So just to be clear in terms of what you're asking for, in the event that work was directly issued by NBN Co and everyone was on the same contracting tier, if that makes sense, would you accept that NBN Co would have a right to, if you like, have preferential treatment for contractors that it saw as delivering better value, better service, better, speed of response or whatever their metrics were? Or are you arguing that there should be, if there's 10,000 jobs and there's 5,000 contractors, that everyone gets 2 jobs each regardless?
I think it's fair to say what I said before about a business plan. You can't keep operating a system, year in, year out, adding more and more workers to the system, many unskilled. Not only to create a quality issue and the pressure then placed on the skilled operatives who are invested in their business over a long period of time, but you can't have a situation when you've got a bucket of work, but the bucket of supply is far greater than the bucket of work. So there needs to be a proper business plan across for these guys on the required number of people. We've made the build. The build's done. Yes, we're doing some adjustments. We clearly understand of the network in relevant parts where the ageing technology is, and that's a small amount of work at different times. So the real essence is installation and repair. Therefore, we need a system to understand what is the business model, the total number of resources required against the projected volume of work, and move to some sort of model which then gives these guys a viable business where you can't survive. You take away at the moment the $75 payment per job they've been receiving since around April this year, up until the end of October, and it's still to be reviewed by NBN. You take that to one side. Many have already reported that the volume of work and the rate of pay they receive doesn't equivalent to them to maybe able to make a viable business even each day, and come to the end of the week struggling to put not only food on the table to meet their basic business costs. So that's where the dilemma is right now. And when you look at what's been referred to earlier, when you look at the system of NBN Co, delivery partner, and take away the prime for the moment, how much money's in the pod between NBN Co and the delivery partner at the moment? And I'm sure hundreds of millions of dollars. But these poor buggers at the end are not seeing any increases, seeing less work by more influx of people, and decreases to their rates. It reaches a tipping point where their businesses can no longer be viable or attend to the needs of Australians when it comes to the connecting their internet or maintaining their services.
So in the case of people doing 3 or 4 jobs a day, which I understand to be average, listening to the evidence this morning, what does that translate to in terms of the hours that you work? Because what I'm trying to get a sense of here is, how many hours a day are you working when you're doing these 3 or 4 jobs?
It's Steve Nedeljkovsky here. That can vary. You could to do 3 or 4 jobs on average, to be honest, anywhere from 4 to 6 hours, but that 4 or 6 hours can become 12 hours. Because the network that we're working on that's out there in particular technologies is quite old and fragile, and there's not just the one fault. It's faults in multiple locations that require every particular location to be attended to physically so that you can resolve and rectify the issue.
Just to put this to you, there's some variability, I get that, but that means that people that are doing 8 to 10 jobs are potentially working 24 to 28 hours a day, which makes no sense whatsoever.
Well, that depends, because if you have a look at a lot of those people's work, and they're probably some of them are probably the unskilled ones. They're the people that most of us skilled technicians were following around and cleaning up their mess. And I can assure you, to get through 8 or 9 jobs in a day, it'd either have to be specific type of work, which would probably be fibre to the basement work, or it would be fibre to the curb work, which is very simple. It's a lot simpler. But the people like us that are doing a lot of fibre to the node, and that's working on the Edge network, there's no 15-minute jobs, unfortunately. And I can assure you that if you drove around the streets, you'd see people with headlights on it, with head torches running around at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock at night, and that's those guys. I've seen plenty of them.
So, what terms do you contract under with these primes? Like, do you send them invoices and then they pay you 30 days later, or how does that work?
I don't work under a prime. I do work direct. Only somebody could probably answer.
I think you're referring to the delivery partner, Senator. Just answer on the basis of the delivery partner, I think, Steve.
Yeah, sure.
Invoice, etc.
So the invoice is generated by the delivery partner. So once we close the work order off, an invoice is generated, and then we get an email with an invoice for us to review. And if we're happy with everything being on that particular invoice, we then submit that for review, and that gets reviewed by the delivery partner, gets the tick of approval from NBN, and then it's within 14 days after that we generally accept or receive payment, FPOS payment, into our bank account. So we don't physically write out any invoices. It's all done for us. But we still have to do all the administration, make sure that all the jobs are there.
Under the Independent Contractors Act that sort of stand out there. I mean, if you're not setting rates, if you're not sending invoices, and you're getting paid less, in your view, than someone who would, as an employee, be paid more for the same work, all of that stacks up to, at a simple level, not being a contractor.
I can agree.
Yeah, I mean,
but we're not given a choice. We're not given a choice.
is it that you guys would prefer to be employees, or are you happy being contractors but you want the middlemen out the way? Just so I clearly understand your evidence.
It's Peter O'Connell here. If I could just jump in on that.
Let them answer. Let the boys answer.
It's Burak Sagal, and just add to that.
Yeah.
So, for me, in my opinion, I want a contract. Right, I started a small business 10 years ago. I've invested every dollar into being able to work across every technology other than HFC. Now, what I want is just the rates to be in line with and go up in line with the cost of living and what's asked of me. So I started 5 years ago, I think it was, on the NBN project. My rate for a fault then is the same now, but my tools list has doubled, my training has doubled, I've had to buy a new car because I couldn't hold enough material or enough equipment in the old car. Now, I just don't see why that rate has not increased with, with my work and what's expected of me. So we submit photos with every job. We never used to. We've now doubled our training, so we're taking double the time off. Fuel prices have gone up in 5 years over 20, 25 cents a litre. My insurances, just the public liability, have gone from 300 to I think it's 800 now. I never had tools insurance. I now need to pay for tools insurance. So I don't know if the DPs are getting paid more than what they did 5 years ago, and we're just not seeing that on our end. But we don't have the ability to negotiate that because it's take the rates or don't work, because we don't have any other options to perform this work. We can't pick up fault finding or installation privately. It has to come through one of the DPs. So I don't know if that helps, but
yeah, no, it does. It gives. Does anyone else want to make comment? And then,
can I just add something
to that? Time, so I'll hand back to the chair. But
sorry, I was just going to add something as well, just regarding Steve Nedeljkovski again. Sorry, Senator. What I wanted to also let you know earlier, from just what we spoke about a little earlier, a lot of these gentlemen that have been spoken about that are working under primes, a lot of them were getting particular technology type of work. And the technicians that, like myself, and I can probably vouch for all of them that are on here today, with the background of Telstra, have got a great copper experience. They would use us to go and do all the harder jobs, which is fibre to the node. And all these guys that were working under these primes were getting all the fibre to the curb jobs. And every time I would ask the delivery partner, why aren't these guys getting trained, or why is this work not being shared evenly? They would say, we're working on it, and never eventuated.
That was good.
Good. Thanks very much for that answer. And thank you, Senator Small. Sorry, back to you, Senator Small.
No. Thanks, Chair.
Good, thank you. Now go to in camera. From the BSA. Thank you for joining us, and for your benefit, I am the Chair, Senator Tony Sheldon, and I'm joined by the Deputy Chair, Senator Matt Canavan, Senator Ben Small, and Senator Jess Walsh. The Hansard record, will you please state your full names and the capacity in which you appear today?
Timothy Mark Harris. I'm the CEO and Managing Director at BSA.
Thank you, Mr. Harris.
Richard Bartley. I'm the Exec General Manager for BSA.
Thank you. Thank you for that. BSA has lodged submission 193 with the committee. Would you like to make any amendments or additions to that submission?
No, thank you.
Information on parliamentary privilege and the protection of witnesses and giving evidence to parliamentary committees has been provided to you as part of your invitation to appear. I now invite you to make a short opening statement, no longer than 2 minutes, to allow time for questions. And at the conclusion of your remarks, I will invite members of the committee to ask questions.
Thank you. And I thank the committee for the opportunity to appear today. My name's Tim Harris. I'm the Managing Director and Chief Executive Officer at BSA. I appear with my colleague Richard Bartley, the Executive General Manager of BSA. BSA is a technical services contracting company listed on the Australian Securities Exchange. We provide technical communication services to major providers across Australia, including Telstra, Foxtel and the National Broadband Network. We've been operating in Australia for 25 years and have offices and warehouses in 24 locations Australia-wide. BSA engages over 2,500 Australians to deliver services to our customers. As a delivery partner of the NBN, BSA is committed to excellence in client service, and our workforce is essential to our ongoing operations and success. Our operating model is based on the fast-changing nature of telecommunications work, as well as meeting consumer demand for requirements to be met within short timeframes. Accordingly, labour subcontractors form an essential part of this model. BSA is proud of its relationship with its workers and supports its contracting model. Through monthly meetings between supervisors and technicians on site, called Toolbox Talks, BSA receives feedback from these technicians. Our technicians have told us that they consider there to be an advantage in being engaged as a contractor due to the ability to earn greater rates by being paid on a per job basis, provide input into the areas in which they work in, have the ability to reject orders, and also adjust their working schedules as it suits them. In addition, BSA is committed to maintaining a robust and effective relationship with the key unions in our industry, particularly the Communications, Electrical and Plumbing Union of Australia, or CEPU, who we meet with on a semi-regular basis. BSA has a strong focus on safety in its service delivery and has a large health and safety team who constantly visit work sites and conduct safety audits. Those audits also involve speaking daily with subcontract work staff. We proactively give the authority to our workforce to stop for safety as required if the work site is unsafe for any reason. BSA strictly complies with the legislation applying to its operations, which includes those regulating modern slavery, health and safety, corporate governance, employment, environment and other matters. In our view, the legislative and regulatory regimes across the country are effective in creating safe and secure working environments. BSA very much welcomes this inquiry, and Richard and I would be very pleased to answer your questions.
Thank you, Senator Canavan.
Thank you, Chair. Thanks for coming along this morning, or this afternoon now, I suppose. Could I ask, what do you keep figures on the average pay or average payments, I suppose I should say, that are provided to individual contractors, and what is that average?
Well, it varies enormously, obviously, based off, as we said, there's a flexibility within that model. Therefore, some subcontractors would opt not to work full-time, either on the programme in totality or for us, remembering that, many contractors would work partly for BSA and partly for other delivery partners as one of the benefits of that model, and therefore we wouldn't have visibility of their total payments. What we do know is that if you look at average productivity that can be achieved, and also average rates that happen, and as I said, there's a lot of different rates for different technologies, different regions, different complexities of work. We do know that the average rates and take-home pay is significantly in excess of the award rates that would happen with an employee.
Right. I realise the complexities here. This morning, though, we had evidence that contractors believe they're only taking home something around $100,000 a year, and that is before costs, before fuel, before purchase of tools, and before making an allowance for leave and superannuation, which they don't get as a contractor, of course. That seems incredibly low. Almost minimum wage type low after costs. Is that wrong? Are you disputing those figures? I mean, if let's take you're saying you don't have an average example, but a hypothetical example of someone who works full time for yourself, what sort of pay would they expect to get?
We'd have an average rate per hour, and Richard could maybe expand, which would be, we're thinking it's kind of double where the award rate would be. Obviously, the actual gross amounts that would therefore be taken home would be, a combination of that plus also their availability. Well, we would actively encourage the technicians to embrace doing other things with their business. That's part of the model. Working for other delivery partners on the program, as well as obviously balancing their personal lives and other things that they may have. And therefore, I'm not in any way disputing that they're incorrect on what they're saying. I'm just saying there's many inputs into that we wouldn't have visibility on, quite rightly, or control over.
Yeah, that's right, Tim. We know on the NBN platform we have, on average, 4 to 5 jobs a day, and that's within the time the technicians choose to work. The award rate's about $28 per hour, and we know that on average the techs can earn $63 per hour, which is well in excess of the award rate. The award rate includes all allowances as well, fully loaded.
I just missed that last bit, sorry.
The $28 award rate includes allowances, meal allowance, first aid allowance, industry allowance, and annual leave.
Mr. Bartley, could you just stop for a moment? I'm sorry, just make sure that Senator's on mute. So we're getting background noise. Thank you.
Might be the tropical birds here, Chair, in Central Queensland. I'll try and mute when I'm not talking. I'm struggling to see why the award rate is relevant here, because that would be, presumably as an award rate, that would be for an employee. Whereas the contractors have to make provisions for all these non-employment provisions, and $56 an hour seems relatively low. But if I get a tradie out to my house, he's charging more than that. So it does seem these people are not quite paid in reference to what would normally be tradesman type rates working in a contract type position.
Well, we obviously feel they are. We use the award rate as obviously that has some fundamentals in terms of a base rate. Were they to be an employee, as you say, they're not employees. And there's lots of other factors in there, as you quite rightly raise. There's factors around the equipment, the tools of trade that would need to be able to go and work. But there's also, things in there about, who else they work for and what they do with their business, which is something that obviously BSA doesn't, we actively encourage them to use other bits of their business. So therefore, as volumes to us peak and trough, as they do under our contracts, they can work for us in a very healthy way, but also work for other delivery partners or use their skills across other platforms, be that in the telecommunications industry or wider, as well as balance their personal life. So it's very difficult. Obviously, there's so many inputs into that. We don't have visibility over what their gross income would be. And we do feel that, we speak to our technicians obviously daily. Our technicians are our business. And therefore, we're comfortable that the market dynamic works such that there's many in there making a good, healthy living, which we're pleased about.
Okay, I'll move on here. This morning we also heard some generic allegations of corruption in the supply chains. And I know any particular commercial arrangements can be vulnerable to this, but what's your assessment of any such allegations in your supply chain? What action have you taken to deal with it? And are you confident that it's been eradicated if there was any evidence of such behaviour being engaged in?
Yeah, well, as you say, that's it's always a risk, but something we would take very, very seriously. As I say, our business, we don't own tangible assets per se. That's that side. As I say, the contract workforce and our relationship with them and the loyalty there is our business. What I'd say on that one is we're an ASX listed business, therefore that brings with it certain protocols and stuff. We'd like to think that our own bars and our own acceptance of these things is even higher than that. But there's a safety net there for everyone to know that we act within those. So we have that governance process around it. Specifically in terms of those things, there's a whistleblower hotline within BSA, which is paid for and armed by a third party and is completely anonymous. And everybody's aware of that and it's very well communicated. So therefore, there's an element, and we have other protocols as well, but there's an element of self-policing there, because obviously if people are losing out as a result of those kind of behaviours, they're gonna raise it up, and that's a very useful background. And we, for our own benefit and mandated by myself and by the board, and also, you know, under the governance processes, we make sure we run every one of those to ground. So if there is a complaint through that hotline, which does happen, in, you know, as you say, we make sure we run all of that to ground. We also have various protocols in terms of disclosure within, if anyone's got any conflicts in relationships or anything like that may do that. And obviously, if there's any feedback that comes to us through the supply chain, either up from the subcontractor workforce or down from our clients, we take that very seriously and we run that to ground. And there's nothing to state on that I can say that we've found of corruption in that. And, you know, importantly now, a lot of our, including the NBN now under the new contract, you know, they are in control, quite rightly, of actually giving the work out, etc. So, you know, an opportunity, I guess, for anyone within our workforce or whatever to manipulate that is not there. We don't control the flow of the work to the individual technicians.
Can I just clarify then? I might have missed something there, but what I wanted to ask would clarify it anyway. So have you dismissed anybody or ended a contractual relationship with anybody for fraudulent activity? And if so, when did that occur? And or have you got any ongoing investigations into claims of fraud? We constantly look into, and if there's perceived wrong behaviours, we do, whether they be health and safety or whether they be fraudulent, we would remove people from our platform, be they however they're contracting with us. We wouldn't see that. We obviously make sure we get the right evidence, so we don't jump at an allegation. We make sure it's founded, and we do have evidence where we've either, you know, people who have contracted with us through whatever mechanism have been removed from our delivery platform as a result of breaches. Richard, I'm not sure if you got anything to add there.
Yes, that's right, Tim. In the last 12 months or so, we've terminated a few primes for various reasons, health and safety, compliance. And the latest one we took off the platform, we identified, we'd heard that they weren't paying their subcontractors in full on time. So we asked that prime for a stat deck to declare that they were complying with the law as per our MSA statement of work. And we didn't get that guarantee from that prime, and that we removed them from the platform. As a result of that, 7 of the contractors who were working under that prime came direct to BSA, which was a good outcome for us to retain that expertise on our platform.
Could I ask you to take on notice then exactly how many contractors have been removed from your platform for fraud, and or any employees as well? I'm only asking for the number. I'm not asking for details or names or anything like that, just a number.
Absolutely, we'll take that on notice.
Thank you. Cheers. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you, Senator Canavan. Senator Walsh.
Thank you very much, Chair. In your submission, you say that you employ or engage about half of the technicians through primes and about half directly as independent contractors to you. Can you just explain why you do it that way? Why you make up the workforce that way?
Yeah, we like to offer the different options that can work for people best. As I say, our business is our subcontractor workforce, and everyone's got their own circumstances, and they're all at their own point in the curve of their career journey and want different things. So what we've got about 850 permanent employees within BSA, mainly in sort of back office and support functions, things like health and safety, to make sure that's all happening, supervision, etc. And then there's about 1,600 who are subcontractors to us, and about half of those are through primes. And we find as I say, everyone would have their own individual reasons, and it's not for us to either dictate those or challenge those. Many who would go through primes, for instance, would do so, because of the insurance requirements, and just effectively the way we see it is it's like running your own mini business, and not everybody's comfortable with that for various different reasons, or would prefer a different relationship. And we do sometimes see where people are either they've worked for many years together in tandem, or they're from maybe the same family, and therefore one of those would take the lead in terms of almost running the business, and the others prefer therefore to effectively just be allocated works to be able to do that through it. And as I say, insurance would be a big thing. It's obviously a requirement for us under the contracts, as you would expect, and they can therefore pull that. We do offer, as Richard just said, that people can contract with us directly. So, were there to be a preference for someone to do that, we, by all means, we completely encourage that. And as Richard said, there's plenty of examples there. And as you can see from the fact we're about 50-50, we've got a healthy number of our contractors that would come to us direct. As long as they've got the insurances and the qualifications to do the work safely under the contract, then we'd welcome that.
Yeah, just on that, in your submission, you talk about a process that you've run to offer people the opportunity to direct contract with you rather than via a prime. What is that process? And I guess, I think in your submission you mentioned that if people meet certain standards, you're willing to take them on direct to you. What are those standards? What's the process? What right of sort of reply or what right of hearing do people have there in that process?
Yep. So, at its heart is the requirements under the contract to keep people safe, really. So they'd need to have both the technicians themselves and also the end customers, etc. So they would have to have the qualifications required. That obviously works under the prime as well. But, if they want to step out there and do maybe more different work for us directly, we'd help them on that journey in terms of the qualifications they require, but they'd have to have that. Insurances is one that they would have to be able to operate in that kind of model. And the tools of trade as dictated by whichever technologies they work on and how that works, to be able to, as I say, safely, but also to a high quality standard, deliver the works. Richard, I'm not sure if you've got anything to add there.
Yeah, just a bit, Tim. Obviously, there's training and accreditations that prove the skill set of the contractor, but also the right to work in Australia. We do police checks, so there's quite a long list of checklist, if you like, to meet the requirements. As Tim mentioned, safety is paramount, so we need to make sure they've got the relevant training there. And we have expressions of interest. So how we source those interested technicians, obviously we advertise on our website for expressions of interest, and we get direct individual contractors applying through that channel, but also prime contractors applying through that channel. So that's basically how it works, the process.
So you've competed with other delivery partners for contracts with NBN Co. Does NBN Co provide any guidance or any set of expectations when it comes to what the technicians should be paid?
Well, we're obviously paid a particular rate from NBN, and the way the supply chain clearly works is that's a key input into that. Very difficult for us commercially, obviously, to pay above that or anything else, and obviously, over time, and we've got a long track record in here, and NBN quite rightly would expect that the vast majority of that is. So if we were to try and protect supernormal profits or something out of that contract, obviously it would be to our detriment, because those subcontractors quite rightly have choice, and that's one of the good things about this model for them. We know that on any given day they could work for us and for somebody else, and clearly if the rates are better somewhere else, just simply through the economics of supply and demand, someone would offer better rates, secure those people and get the work and get the technicians. So it polices through what I would describe as a normal market economy. There's so much money that comes to delivery partners from NBN based off their ability to be able to be competitive in their market. And then, were anybody to try and effectively almost take advantage of that and keep more for themselves than they should, it would correct through the fact that the subcontractors have choice and those other delivery partners would immediately become more competitive.
So we heard earlier evidence around how the job rates are set with different primes or delivery partners. And we heard rates like $74 for a fault job and $80 for an installation job. How are those sorts of rates, whatever they may be for you, how do you set them?
Well, so overall from a contract term, as I say, there's a set scheduler rates basket which is set with the end client. It's not for me, obviously, to talk about how they would set that across the other delivery partners, but we know with ourselves that's been that's set and very robustly through the whole tender process and ongoing, and that has CPI reviews which would reset those on a periodic basis to make sure that we're keeping up. And then Sorry,
Mr. Harris. Thanks so much for answering that, but I just wanted to make sure I understood what the NBN Co's role is. You mentioned a sort of interaction or a basket or something. I didn't quite catch you there, but you mentioned sort of an interaction with the NBN around those sort of job prices.
Well, yeah. So for every job type, technology, region, etc., we have a agreed rate with NBN, which they would pay to BSA as they would pay to the other delivery partners. We then use that, obviously, as you'd expect, to set our rates with the subcontractors on a similar process. So, the same kind of jobs, etc., etc. And again, those have reviews periodically to catch, CPI and competitive tension, etc., etc. And as you would expect on all programs, not just the NBN, but all programs we're involved in, because we do multiple programs, there's a learning experience for everyone as well, and things change slightly. Different technologies come in, or the landscape changes slightly. So there's a healthy process of sort of constantly making sure any exceptions are dealt with, both up through us to our client, but also down into the technicians. Because as I say, it's in nobody's best interest for technicians to be not able or not feeling that they're getting adequately rewarded, because, as I said, they're not doing a good job and wanting to be on that platform. They have that choice. They're not an employee of ours. They could go work somewhere else. So if the rates within the NBN platform were not at a right level, they could find other things to do with their qualifications. And if the rates, BSA in particular in isolation, was not paying, were not competitive, they'd go and work for the other delivery partners or outside of the program.
So I'm still unclear from your answers, and I think you're genuinely trying to answer the question, but whether there's just like a lump sum that you're given and then you work everything out, or whether at the heart of that lump sum there's some sort of unit job price.
Yeah, so there's a unit job price. We don't have guaranteed volumes which would therefore generate a price. So for every job that NBN have that they allocate through BSA, we would get paid a price. Now, that job could have 2 or 3 different rates. It could be there's an install, but there's also a bit of digging up that had to happen. There's a bit of, and that's a very healthy process, because what we don't want to do is incentivise technicians to rush a job or anything, because then health and safety comes in. So there's a well thought out process where we'll get allocated the job. That will create 3 or 4 tasks within it. Everybody in that supply chain, from the technician to BSA to NBN, will agree that those tasks were required and did get done through technology, and that will create an amount of money which is therefore owed by NBN to BSA, and likewise an amount of money that is owed by BSA to the technician for fulfilling that job.
So the independent contractor gets some amount of that job price, and you get some sort of margin on that job price. And when there's a prime involved, in addition to providing the sort of the insurance and things like that that the independent contractors might need, they get a margin as well on that original sort of NBN job rate.
That will be, so our contracting relationships, obviously, with them, as you say, we keep, the vast majority goes to the technicians. We keep some to keep our business, and we're playing the role of, obviously, you know, health and safety and the supervision and piece and that. So there's a piece in there, as you say, market dynamic would say if we tried to overreach there, it would sort itself out. And that's not how, you know, as I say, they weren't just words at the start. We're genuinely very proud of them. We know that our business is our subcontractors, not just in the telecommunications market, everywhere else. So we keep that going. In terms of the prime piece, our relationship contractual terms are obviously with that prime. We have a contract in place that makes sure that they do everything legally and through regulation to comply. And we can, as Richard said with the example, we can request stat decks, et cetera, where we think behaviours are not happening. And then obviously their contractual relationship is with the subcontractor beneath that, so how they work that out. Now, as I said, it's important to us that we therefore offer avenues for those underlying subcontractors doing the work to either subcontract to us directly or to have a voice up through whistleblower hotlines, et cetera, if they feel there's an issue in there. But we don't have the contractual relationship with them directly if they're through a prime.
Senator Walsh, there's time to go to Senator Small, if that's okay.
Oh, okay. I've just got one more question, Chair, if we get time later on.
Thank you. Senator Small.
Thanks, Chair. Folks, you mentioned in your submission that there's roughly 1,400 individuals who work for you either directly as an independent contractor or up through a prime. Do you have to hand how much you spend? So is that roughly 50% of your expenditure also goes to the independent contractors directly and 50% through your primes? Or how is your sort of OPEX split?
Yeah, it's 50% by number, so Richard may have a bit more, but it varies enormously as well, obviously, because there's different technologies, different regions, and people will make different choices as they go on to either do something else, take some time off, or, as I say, interact other business interests in which have nothing to do with the NBN program. So we'll see people, and they have that right, they can just reject jobs. So it's 50-50, which I would assume is not a long way out from the OPEX spend, but that OPEX spend can change by the day. But there's no reason why it would be wildly out from that.
Yeah, absolutely, Tim. Spot on. It's in line with the 50-50 split, not exact due to the reasons you gave in terms of the many variables in terms of technology, types of work, hours of work, across those different profiles, but they're not, it's not going to be wildly different than 50-50.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. On the issue of job scoping, I'm curious. Can you tell us for a particular job classification, say a simple install or a simple fault find or whatever classification you've got, over the last 5 years, are you able to indicate in percentage terms how much your payment to either direct subcontractors or your primes has varied? Is that still at the same rate that it was 5 years ago? Has it gone up or down?
I'm not sure if I've lost Richard, actually. Are you still on, Richard? I think he could come back and maybe offer some more if not, but I can tell you that what theoretically, obviously we've changed overall contract type. So that has, reset through a tender process all of the rates that we would receive. And as I say, what's factored into there is our sort of learnings of the years before. There is a process. Richard, the question was about over the last 5 years, have the rates moved a lot? Effectively, there was a bit more to the question with the technicians. So my read would be we have reset the contract, therefore, that's reset some of the terms. There is a CPI assessment that can go in there. Some of those rates will have gone up. Some will have not for different reasons. So as I say, it'll depend for that technician, and also the demand for certain jobs as that project has played out. Obviously, demand or supply goes up and down a little bit. That will have played in there a little bit. There was a peak period where obviously there was lots happening. Now it's shifted a bit into different technologies and different requirements about constant maintenance. COVID-19's played in there, obviously, in terms of people's requirements at home. So there's a basket of things to come into there. There is an annual review process where those rates get reset, and a discussion with the CPI, etc. It's very difficult to. So some people would have not seen rates move a lot. Others would have seen rates go up, depending on where they are in terms of the technology mix and where their specialist skills are. Richard, have you got anything to add to that?
Yeah. So over the last 5 years, there's not been a material move in rates, but there is. The rates are impacted by the mix of work. So, for example, during the connection phase of the NBN, if HFC, there was a big play on rolling out HFC or different types of technology by the different SAMs, obviously those rates would be in play for those technologies at that time, and they would dominate those months, if you like, where NBN were rolling out that technology. And then that would switch when the other technologies came in. So there's different rates for every technology. They're all built from historic data. The rates are all built up from ground up in terms of timings of the jobs. There's new rates introduced for new tasks. But, significant, in terms of significant movements in the rates themselves, once they're built on history, they will be tuned rather than changed dramatically, because we know we've built them bottom up as an industry. Yeah, no, I guess what I'm getting at is we, on the other side of the ledger, we've heard, rates are what they were 5 years ago or even less. So although your contract with NBN might have had renewal and CPI reviews each year and things like that, the contention is that hasn't flowed through. So I'm happy if it's on notice, but it would be very useful if you were able to articulate for some elements that remain constant. And I mean, I get the new technology mix and the various changes in the program rollout, but for a unit of work, for a given skill level, all that sort of stuff, how much the rates have changed over the last 5 years or whatever you have to hand that's a comparable benchmark. And related to that, another complaint was that where a technician attends a job and for whatever reason can't complete the work because the scope changes, that they're not paid for that attendance. Is that true in your view, or do you have a different understanding? Yeah, there's quite a few rules, we call them business rules, that dictate whether the technician gets paid for an incomplete job or not. And, I won't go through them all, but it's not true to say that they never get paid for an incomplete job. It depends on the type, the reason, and the type of rationale why the job was incompleted. So they do get paid an incomplete rate on a number of jobs, and but not 100% of the jobs. And that's agreed, obviously, with our upstream client. Brilliant, thanks. In terms of the technicians that have approached you to transfer, I guess, from contracting through a prime to directly contracting with BSA, you noted in your submission that where they satisfy your quality and assurance requirements, you were able to accommodate those requests. Can I ask, how many requests did you receive in aggregate? Was this 3 people and you accept them, or are we talking, dozens or hundreds? Did you initiate that process, or was this organic? Yeah, as Tim alluded to, we've got a very balanced split, from source, if you like, 50-50, which is, really good in terms of the industry average. In the last 12 months on the NBN platform alone, we've had 25 people come from under, or technicians I should say, come from under a Prime direct. So that gives you a bit of a kind of view on the quantity.
Yeah, excellent.
So,
in terms of invoicing,
Senator Small, I'm just mindful that we're getting quite through our time, but if you want to have a last follow-up question now.
Yeah, perfect. Thanks, Chair. With regard to invoicing, what is the process that you use to, I guess, be invoiced by subcontractors or Prime, doesn't matter, interested in both, and on what terms, if it's not commercially sensitive, do you pay?
Yeah, so what the process is...
14 days or whatever.
Yeah, the process is the technician completes the work order in the NBN system. Once that's complete and BSA are confident that all the requirements of the job has been met, we will pass that work order for payment, so it becomes eligible for payment. Our average payment rate on the unified services in terms of payment terms, is at the moment sitting at around 15 business days, so which is well ahead of our terms upstream. So that's the process.
Okay, perfect. Thank you, and thanks, Chair.
Thanks, Senator Walsh. Senator Small, thank you very much. Appreciate it. Just I wanted to go over this question. There was a question raised about, appropriate in your earlier evidence about potentially inappropriate activity by, I gather, primes and subcontractors. And again, you're welcome to give as much detail as you'd like. Have any of those matters led to the police being notified and or NBN?
Apologies, Chair. I'm not aware of what has been raised specifically.
So it was raised by Senator Canavan. Just raised this question about what do you do about somebody who's not complying. I'm paraphrasing my words now, but somebody who's not complying with the standards that you expect as a prime or a subcontractor, and you gave evidence to say that actions of a various nature was taken. I'm just, as a result of that evidence, I'm wondering whether I'd like you to answer if you can tell us whether police have been notified in any of those circumstances, or has NBN been notified of any of those circumstances?
We haven't had any proof or evidence provided to us or proven via our investigation process that Tim identified earlier of any criminal activity. We take that very seriously as part of our listed status, obviously. And if we came across any criminal activity, we would report it to the police. And we encourage all our stakeholders who come across those issues to report it direct to the police as well.
Well, thanks. I just want to go to you mentioned before, and Mr. Kincaid and also yourself, Mr. Harris, Mr. Bartley, sorry, and also yourself, Mr. Harris. The issue of the market fixes if there's, if people pay too little. Just want to go to this question then. Do you have a cost recovery model which says what the contractor should be paid? So do you work out wages, workers' comp, insurance, ongoing capital costs, running costs of the operation? Do you have any calculation that you use?
Yeah, well, as I say, those calculations are difficult for us to do because, the answer is yes. As in, we obviously look at their requirements and we know what those requirements are, And that feeds in, if you like, if you go right back to the tender, that would feed into what we think we can do the job for up to NBN. Like that, it starts from there with us knowing what we would have to pay to effectively, make the subcontractors whole, more than whole. Make it an appealing place for them to play. So we built our business on subcontractors. We kind of know we need them to be there because we also need them to be engaged and performing well for us to be able to satisfy our contractual agreement. So through that tender process, it would be built up of saying, well, what rate would need to be there? And it's the concept you just outlined. What would their costs be? What would their return be? As well as external factors like what would other market competitive forces play, because they would have choices. For many of them, they'd be able to take their skill set and qualifications into other markets potentially. We need to be able to make sure we can counteract that. But as you say, it builds in our thinking of how we build up the rate is based off our market knowledge of what they would need and what their requirements would be for a decent return on those needs. And that forms the original tender, which then forms all the scheduling rates.
Good, thanks for that. So if you set a rate for those workers that you directly engage, and then there's a rate which is set by the primes, do you audit those rates that are paid by the primes in light of the fact you've given evidence that you look at, what is a fair, using my language, what is a fair thing on what you pay? Do you audit the primes at all?
We don't. We make sure that they're in line, as Richard pointed out, with the person not paying. So if we get any complaints, we don't have a contractual relationship. So we don't, on an ongoing basis, look at every rate that's being paid. We obviously have a contract with them that makes it very clear they need to hit legal and regulatory compliance, but not in terms of, we wouldn't be in a position to quite rightly be able to sort of dictate rates of what they need to pay through. That's not our contractual relationship.
I know, so sorry to describe this a different way. You've got a rate that you see as being the rate you should pay your contractors, and then primes who are engaging subcontractors. So you don't audit the subcontractors for the prime to see that they're getting paid the same rate you think is a fair rate that you apply to your own direct workers?
Sorry, we don't audit directly. We obviously give them the option of being able to speak to us to come direct if they feel that they'd be better off, as you say, paying the additional costs, whatever they may be, insurances, etc., and tools, and getting the rate directly from us. That's when we have those 25 that Richard just talked to. But we don't spend time, as I say, going into a contract which we don't have with the underlying subcontractors beneath the prime.
Just this question then. So there's all the one of better language, but auditing processes. If somebody gives you a stat deck to say they've paid. The question's never about how much they paid.
No, the question would be about whether they've paid in full and the entitlements and within rate. So it would be a wholesome question, I guess, about them totally fulfilling, not just that they may have paid a small percentage or something. So we would require, and that would have been the example that Richard gave, where we acted very clearly on that when we didn't get the comfort we required.
Is there a regulation that requires you to, on what should be paid to technicians or anyone that's working in your supply chain? Are there any regulations that affect?
In terms of rates or in terms of timing?
In terms of rates and certainly in terms of conditions as well, which can include timing.
Well, as I say, there's award rates for similar. These are independent contractors, so as I say, it doesn't apply. But we obviously look at that in terms of a model. What Richard described as the 15 days is obviously well within any kind of sort of SOPA arrangements or things like that, where we would need to pay small business, which we're pleased about. Well, as I say, we see that as a value add. And, BSA is playing a role of managing the working capital requirements. So we're paying subcontractors before we're paid ourselves, which is fine. That's part of all of the contractual relationships. But we're well within any kind of, as I say, SOPA relationships or anything like that, which would be either 30 or 45 days.
Well, does it concern you that a prime that you're engaging is engaging subcontractors that are taking 20 to 40% off as a commission? Sorry, in one piece of evidence we got as high as 50%.
Well, of course. As I say, we don't have that contractual relationship, so we can't. Be inappropriate for me to comment too much on all those.
You are under oath, and you are obliged to answer, and you are able to comment. Would be appropriate.
Well, what we would do is offer them obviously a voice and an avenue to be able to either anonymously raise that through our whistleblower hotline, or raise directly to us their desire to come out from behind that prime and contract with us directly, which we do on a regular basis.
So and just so I'm very clear, and probably my final question, I may have two more, I think. Sorry about that. If a contract is terminated, is there any jurisdiction that they can go to that, such as the Fair Work Commission?
If a contractor
believes that have been unfairly terminated, they believe, whether they are is a question. Is there a court or process that someone can actually appeal to?
Well, I would imagine it would depend. It would depend on the relationships, but absolutely they would be going to Fair Work if they felt there was unfair treatment under any kind of contract they had. Absolutely.
Well, the Fair Work Commission doesn't give the power for that to happen. Can I just then go to the rates? If they have a disagreement about rates that are being paid, other than you've given evidence, and thank you for that, where people make complaints that you directly consider them, is there a system where those people have got a collective bargaining process about what those rates are? And is there an independent tribunal such as the Fair Work Commission that can oversight that those rates are fair and reasonable? And I'm going not just yourselves, BSA, but also across the market.
I'm not aware of how that would collectively get negotiated. As I say, it's based off all of our knowledge of the market and the industries and stuff ourselves. So we're using that collective information, but I'm not personally aware of an industry body of that.
No, we get feedback from the technicians, obviously, on rates that aren't working for them. So we do have a two-way dialogue via the toolboxes where they're unhappy about rates, and we can raise them up via our customer to get them fixed if it is a real issue. In terms of obviously some of the independent contractors are using the CEPU for that purpose. I'm not aware of another place where that's so. Those two are the avenues that I'm aware of.
There's been allegations that BSA allow for its managers to own companies and then have some contractors working under those arrangements. Is that correct?
Sorry, Richard.
I think we have a very well-defined code of conduct, which includes a conflict of interest policy, and within our employment contracts, we have conflict of interest clauses which state that any perceived or actual conflict needs to be disclosed, and our employees do disclose them, and then we have a management process for ensuring that none of those conflicts can impact in an untoward way.
So we'll just unpack that then. Can you just tell me just then with where employees have then gone through that process and been allowed to engage contractors, how often does that happen?
When you say engage contractors,
if managers or supervisors have their own companies, that have some contractors working under those arrangements for BSA. Is that something that is just be very clear to me, is it yes or no? Can you do that or can't you do that?
Well, yeah, I'm not aware of any employees that have their own companies.
Right. And you're not aware of them contracting then out work to those companies that they manage?
Not that they manage, no. We're aware of employees who have family members who have companies, and they're managed through our processes as discussed. So, one of the perceived conflicts is they get routed more work. That can't happen under the Unified Services model because there's an independent NBN team who routes that work. And previous to the Unified Services Agreement, the OMA agreement, we obviously had controls and segregation of duties that made that very tightly controlled.
Good. Thanks. Thanks very much for your evidence today. I appreciate both of you coming and joining us, and it'll help greatly with our deliberations for the committee in our final report. Your evidence will assist the committee in deliberations, and if you have taken questions on notice, please provide responses to the Secretariat by the 28th of September 2021. So we'll now break to 2:15.
Thank you.